We anticipate that this will come up in front of the board in 2 weeks, so we need to get our questions out there. One of the other things that I want you to recognize, too, is that rarely does this happen. We have food in front of us while we're on TV. So I'm not controlling them tonight. So if you press a button and forget to turn it off, your microphone is on. So, go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. It's good to be here this evening. This workshop is about our proposal for development impact fees. And we have our consultant with Carson Bice here this evening to answer any questions that anyone has. Currently, we have and Grant Green is here as well, and he's able to answer questions as well. But we've put together, there's been a lot of interest over the last year on development impact fees, especially as it relates to residential development and looking for residential development to share in the cost of our growing government and infrastructure. And one of the things that we did is looking in 2019, the city did undertake a full development impact fee study that the current firm this evening that's going to be talking to us, that they did, but that did not pass in 2019. It's different than what's before you for us to start discussion with this evening. It included fire, police, transportation, roads, and parks. So it had multiple across the board, across the government, looking at infrastructure, and it impacted everything, including single-family, multifamily, commercial, and industrial property as well, and development. What we're starting with tonight is we're looking at just residential development. So we're looking at when somebody would get a permit for a single-family home or a townhome or a multifamily unit, then during that, when they get the building permit, they would pay an additional development impact fee. And then this fee, the way this is set up, this fee would go directly to future expansion of levels of service for the Hendersonville Parks Department. And everybody, I think, has access to the study in their packet. But maybe the best way to go on it, Mayor, is just open it up to any questions, and then we can see who can answer that best and give more clarity to this. This is a development impact fees. It is a complex subject, so it's not. It's difficult to make it super simple because there's a lot involved with it. And one of the main things is with anything that we would adopt that would be associated with a development impact fee is to make sure that it is legally defensible. And so a lot of these different things that the consultant will be discussing are ways that will make it defensible if it was challenged in court. So some things, when you're looking at it, especially trying to kind of simplify it to understand exactly what's going on, some of the complexity of it is so that we're addressing all those different issues, like, hey, where are you coming up with this number? How is this calculated? What's that based on? But being able to answer those questions so that anybody could understand exactly how these things are being calculated. But I'll just that's all I had, Mayor.
So, Eddie, you want to go first, or you want to let Karen go first? Or you want to let Karen go first? No, let Karen. Okay.
Just stay.
Okay.
Can you expand upon why we chose Parks and Rec for this revenue?
One of the reasons that we chose that is that it was the simplest one to do. It was the simplest and one of the easier ones to defend. I think, and as far as one of the reasons, and there might be a multiple number of reasons of why in 2019 that it did not get approved then, But I think one of those things that weighed heavy in that decision is the impact that it would have on new commercial development and new industrial development, especially looking that some of our adjacent competing neighbors, don't have those things. So I think that kind of, weighed into it. And yes, yes. Okay, is that Karen? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I'm Carson Bice with Tischler Bice. Is the question of why parks addressed to me?
Why parks and only parks?
I was hired to do a park fee. That was not our decision. But as Keith was mentioning, in 2019, when we did the study, there was a significant amount of concern about the fact that the fire, police, and transportation fees would be assessed against both residential and non-residential development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Karen, I don't want to interrupt you, but we need to drill down. We don't have a lot of time.
Okay.
So,
Turn your mic.
why, if we want to do like Franklin, Tennessee, Franklin has roads and parks. What's keeping us from doing roads and parks?
Well, the study we did for roads is now 5 years old, so you would need to update that. But you would just need to basically approve it through your 2 readings and have a public hearing, and you could implement a road fee. But you'd have to do an updated study.
Can I, a picture, and I know some people don't like pie charts, but I'd like to provide a scenario that I would like to discuss.
Okay.
Right now, 100% of the impact fees would go to parks as being proposed. 100% to parks. So what if we decided we wanted half to go to parks and half to go to roads? Because I hear more about roads than parks. I love parks, I support them, but we got a lot of problems with roads. So what if we split this pie in half?
Well, can I stop you right there?
Okay.
Because that 100% of the park fee goes to parks. That's not a fee that you can slice and dice and add to others. So essentially, you would have to add another 100% for the road fee.
Okay. So we'd have two.
We'd have 2 fees.
Impact fees.
Yes,
Okay, one impact fees for parks
right.
and one impact fees for roads, and that would be divided between commercial and residential, correct?
That's correct.
So if we charge, let's say, $100 for an impact fee, $50 would go here, and 50 would go for roads. Residentials would pay 25%, and commercial would pay 25%, right?
No, that's not accurate.
Okay.
So the impact fees would be would vary. And so, for instance, the park impact fee may be $8,000, but the transportation impact fee may be $4,500. The fire impact fee may be $800. They're going to be differing amounts. So the percentages, although you may be correct on the 50-50, how much each land use pays is not an even calculation, so to speak.
But
He
it
needs
would
a
be
second pie
divided
chart.
some way.
Yeah,
It would be divided some way.
right.
This could be done, except if it is, it would have to be 2 impact fees?
Yes, you'd have a park impact fee and a transportation impact fee.
Does Franklin have 2 impact fees?
I know that they have a transportation. I'm not sure about the others.
Okay, I'm sorry, Karen.
Oh, no,
Go ahead.
I had a question, and I just lost it. So, I guess my concern is, the way it was stated by Director Free, is that the parks fee will be used for improvements of current parks, not maintenance of.
That's correct.
Yeah, I have concern with that, but I may be alone in that.
Well, do you want me to jump into the first
right
part of the
ahead.
presentation? That
Go
may
right
clear
ahead.
up some of these questions.
Yes, thank
And I
you.
won't spend a whole lot of time on the the data that went into it. We'll just sort of do some basic Impact Fee 101, show you the fee amounts, and then kind of open it up. Well, first of all, a little bit about us for those of you who weren't on the board when we were here in 2019. We're a firm that specializes on cost of growth issues. We're based in Bethesda, Maryland, and Boise, Idaho. We focus on impact fees and fiscal and economic impact analysis, and we've done more of that type of work than anybody in the country. So impact fees in general, they are one-time payments, and they're implemented through ordinance. They're usually collected at the time of building permit. Existing residents aren't being assessed an impact fee each year. It's just on new construction. We can't commingle these funds with our general fund. We have to account for them separately. We can't use them for operations, maintenance, repair, et cetera.
Why? Why can't you do it?
Because most statutes prohibit that.
All right, let's look at the statute.
Okay.
Let's look at the Tennessee statute. And you put that in your report. Would you agree with me that this statute is broad and liberal in its use of impact fees?
It is.
The only AG opinion that I could find on this was a 2017 Attorney General opinion that I found, and in there it just said that cities or counties that use these impact fees have to use the test of reasonableness. And so, you know, in Tennessee, we have to go by state law, we have to go by case law, we have to go by AG opinions and Supreme Court rulings. So I don't understand why that we can't use to extend the useful life of a facility or of a field or something. You know, you talk about cost recovery, past improvements. So of the different methodologies that you use, which is the one that you think most closely fits Tennessee's broad and expansionary law?
All three methodologies.
So we could use the cost recovery, which it talks about useful life and remaining capacity. So I'm having trouble understanding. You say you can't be used for improvements to extend the useful life of a ball field. So I have a disconnect there
Okay,
with you.
so you're correct that impact fees are governed by case law, particularly some landmark Supreme Court cases, and there's one actually being considered by the Supreme Court as we speak. In none of those Supreme Court cases do they mention that impact fees can be used for maintenance. Okay, we've calculated more impact fees than anybody in the country. Nobody uses them for maintenance.
But understand, you're talking about Dolan, the
No.
Dolan cases.
I'm talking. Well, those are the ones that have been settled. Yes.
Well, those are the ones you listed in your report.
Right.
And those dealt with confiscation of land by a government.
Okay.
We're not recommended to confiscate land. So the standard that the Supreme Court used, and I'm not an attorney,
And neither am I.
but the standard that the Supreme Court used talks about confiscation of land. And we're not talking about confiscation of land. We're talking about an impact fee. And I'm interested in using impact fees to extend the useful life of a facility.
Okay.
Because as more people come in, more people are going to use Drakes Creek Park, the soccer fields and stuff. So we're going to have to do more maintenance. We're going to have to maybe even turf them so that it can handle more traffic. And so I don't understand why we can't use impact fees for those important things to maintain our useful life of the
Now,
facility.
you have hit on one thing that I agree with. That is, you can make an argument, for instance, that if you're taking a sod field and replacing it with artificial turf, that you're providing more capacity because the fields aren't getting rained on, et cetera, et cetera.
More play.
And you can program it more, right? But an impact fee is designed to offset new growth's demand on infrastructure. In other words, it's to provide additional capacity. That's the rational nexus test that I'm going to talk about in a second. It's, you know, your maintenance needs to repair tennis courts and that sort of thing exists regardless of whether you've got new growth. Now, you can take a, let's say you've got a dilapidated two tennis court facility and you replace it with 4 tennis courts, 2 of those would be impact fee eligible.
Can we ask, we do have an attorney here,
Okay.
and can we ask Mr. Ray for his opinion on whether or not maintenance can be paid out of impact fees?
I agree with the consultant for the most part. It would depend on a case-by-case basis, but the nexus is the capacity part of it. So it has to be reasonably related, the cost of it does, for the capacity. But there are cases where what looks like maintenance could be capacity, but it's it would have to be a case-by-case basis.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So, continuing on, there's basically, well, one other point is that I want to point out, this is not a tax. And the reason I mention this is that I've been in a lot of public bodies around the country where someone says this is just not a tax on, or this is a tax on new development. And it's important that we understand what a tax is and what a fee is. And a tax is primarily revenue raising in nature, as you realize. There's no relationship between the amount that you pay in a tax and the amount of a service that you're consuming. And a fee is very different. A fee is typically designed to cover the cost of something, whether it's the cost of a building permit or the cost to review a site plan. And impact fees are just like that, except that they have to meet three legal standards, and that is we have to show the nexus or the need. So through the study, we have to show that growth is going to happen in Hendersonville. If we want to maintain existing infrastructure levels, we're going to have to provide additional facilities. So that's part of the story that you tell. We also have to show benefit, and we show benefit in 2 ways. One is through the timing of the expenditure, meaning that we just don't collect the money and sit on it for 10 years, right? And there are some state statutes that provide how soon you have to spend the money. So for instance, in Arizona, you have to spend it within 10 years. In South Carolina, you have to spend it within 3 years of the planned date of the expenditure. We also show benefit through geographically. You're not large enough that we'd have to divide the city into benefit zones. That's more for large cities like an Oklahoma City or a Phoenix, or for counties where, for instance, with schools, you're building school capacity in the south, but not in the north. So if I pay an impact fee in the north, I'm not receiving any benefit. So that's what we mean by benefit. And then we have to show proportionality, and that's why you just don't see a residential fee versus a non-residential fee. They're, from a residential side, they're either done by size of house or by type of unit, single family versus multifamily, because in most communities, single family units have more people, generate more vehicle trips, et cetera, than multifamily units. And the demand indicators for non-residential development also vary between retail versus office versus industrial type uses. So,
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
David,
Can I ask him a couple?
yeah, but you need to come up here to do it, because we want to make sure that everybody can hear.
David Lucky, I live in Hendersonville, lived here my whole life, 110 Clarendon Place. Couple of questions. I've got several questions, but is it required to do something other than the parks fee in the state of Tennessee to have legislative approval?
that's
Yeah, we need you up here, though.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, is that, are you the right person to answer that?
question for the attorney in terms of the private act.
Does the city need statutory authority?
I believe the city needs statutory authority to implement an impact fee that is not parks-based. My question is that the case or not? And if that is the case, there's nothing preventing the city from excluding commercial and industrial development from that, not unlike what the county did in 1999 with the implementation of the state fee of the county fee of 70 cents on residential.
So does the city have a statutory or need statutory authority to levy an impact fee for anything other than parks is the question?
I think that's the case. I'm stating that as
Okay.
my understanding of the way the law reads.
Okay.
And the reason from the development community, we look at it from the perspective of Parks has spent something like $800,000 or $900,000 on average over the last 9 years for park improvements, whereas this is a $7,000 fee. I don't understand what the rational nexus is from something that would generate, let's say, 700 permits a year, $4.9 million a year. You're gonna raise another $4 million that you can't do or you haven't ever done anything with. So why even pursue a course of action that y'all have? This is a solution to a problem you don't have.
Yeah, and I wouldn't speak to that because that is, there would have to be proof that it's reasonably related to the cost associated with the new development. I think that the city has statutory authority under the general law of the board and aldermanic type governments to levy that.
That's a question that probably should be answered.
But I would definitely check on myself to confirm that. But I think that that is the case. There are under other forms of municipal governments and county governments where you would need a private act. But I believe that we would not need that as a board of aldermanic type form of government. I think it's already in there. But I will confirm that. I could be wrong.
It's a new question. Appreciate it, Dave. What
All
else?
right, thank you.
Okay. Jeff, you want to go?
Yeah. No, by all means, you're the expert. Could an impact fee be used for the expansion of a road? And I'm specifically thinking Stop 30, with the potential development of that strip there. Right now, it's one lane each way. Could impact fees, because of that additional traffic, be used to widen the road and expand it?
You want to do that? Or?
Yeah, so with transportation impact fees, you can typically use those for intersection improvements, interchanges, road widenings, new construction, or construction of new roads.
Okay, that's what I need. That's what I need. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, okay. So regardless of impact fee category, there are basically three methods we can use to calculate fees. And the way to think about it is looking to the past, the present, and the future. So when we look to the past, we call that the buy-in or the cost recovery. That's where you've oversized facilities, whether through foresight or by accident, it doesn't matter, excess capacity exists. You see that a lot with water and wastewater systems, where you may have a 10 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant. It's currently operating at 6 million gallons a day, and so new growth buys into that remaining 4 MGD of capacity. When we look to the present, which is by far the most common impact fee method, we call that a consumption-based or an incremental expansion method. It's sort of formulaic in that you take a snapshot of where the jurisdiction is in terms of, in this case, parks, the number of park acres per thousand, what does it cost to replicate or purchase parkland, what does it cost to replicate the level of service you have for improvements and amenities. With transportation, it would be looking at your citywide level of service, and let's just say that was a level of service C. We would quantify that in terms of what does that mean in terms of the capacity of a roadway versus the consumption of the roadway, and what does it cost you to build a mile, et cetera, and calculate the fee that way. The plan-based approach is you may get more money from a plan-based approach, but it's also has a lot of risk associated with it. And we see that with transportation is another example, as well as utilities, where if you've got an adopted master plan, and more importantly, you have a funding plan associated with that, you may want to do a plan-based approach that says, we're going to build, in this case, these 10 parks in these given years, and here's the funding arrangements, et cetera, et cetera. We have to guard against charging new development for a higher level of service than you have today, because we can't use impact fees to correct existing deficiencies, to just gentleman's point. So we have to make sure or identify what the growth share of that plan is versus the non-growth share. But the problem with plan-based fees is, let's just say that you have a recession and you're banking on, let's say, $6 million in impact fees to build a $10 million CIP, but growth only brings in $2 million in impact fees. You've got to come up with the other $8 million. With that consumption-based approach, there is no risk because there is no existing deficiency because it's based on the actual level of service. So if you only collect $2 million in fees, you only have to build $2 million in infrastructure because there is no non-growth share. So we also have to guard against new development paying twice. And so that's why we have to evaluate the need for credits. And what we mean by credits are, there's two types. One is, for instance, we work with a lot of jurisdictions that may have a sales tax or a property tax that's dedicated to park improvements or road improvements or police or fire. And so if that revenue source is being used to provide capacity, I'm going to pay you an impact fee, but I'm also going to generate revenue that's going to the same thing that I just paid you impact fees for. So we have to discount that fee for that future cash flow of that revenue source. We also sometimes have to give credits with debt service if there's existing debt on your facilities. The other type of credit, which is more from the implementing ordinance, that is not part of the fee study itself, is the fact that there may be occasions where a developer provides the infrastructure for which the impact fee is being assessed. So for instance, in this case with Parks and Recreation, if a developer were to donate or provide, let's say, a 15-acre parcel for a community park or a sports complex, you would have to arrange for a development agreement to make that developer whole, either through future impact fee payments that go back to them or discounted impact fees. All that would be worked out in the mechanics of the development agreement. But the idea here is we can't charge new development twice. So as part of doing the nexus part of the impact fee, we have to make projections and quantify development that's here today, and the growth projections that we worked out with the city call for or projecting an increase of slightly over 11,100 persons. That's an increase of about 2,650 single-family units and about 2,340 multifamily units over the next 10 years.
Carson, let me interrupt you real
Sure.
quickly. So in the past 5 years, y'all, we have had roughly one new multifamily permit per day. Last year's a little bit lower. Year before is a little bit lower. Year before that was around 400 and something. So it's been hovering right around, right about mid 300s for the past 5 years. That gives you sort of an idea of what's coming up in single family. Multifamily, it's hard to put a finger on it because we had 2 of them 3 years ago, and I don't think we've had any since. So it's a little bit harder to give you a prediction on that. So thank you.
So getting into the numbers, there are several components to the fee. There's the land component and then the improvement component. And this is a little difficult to read from here. But what we do is we take a look at all of your parks and how many acres there are and determine with the city what it would cost you to buy an acre of land if you were going to expand the park system, and that was estimated at $275,000. And so we compare that park level of service or park acreage to your existing residential base to get a level of service standard or the number of acres per person, and then that's multiplied by that cost per acre of $275 to get that land cost per person of, it looks like it's about $2,172. We do the same thing with your improvements or amenities. We look at how many you have throughout the park system and estimate what it would cost for you to replicate that in today's dollars in order to get that asset value, and do the same thing, get a weighted cost or average cost per improvement, look at the number of improvements compared to the population base in order to get the level of service standard and calculate that cost of it. Looks like, what is that? I can't read it from here. $762, does that sound right?
563?
Oh, 562, okay, yeah. So that's a cost per person. And then what we do, since we're not doing a plan-based approach that says we're building Park A, Park B, and Park C over the next 10 years, is you want to quantify, well, what does that mean? So when we take those level of service standards and compare that to the projection and population over the next 10 years, that gives us an idea of how many acres of parkland that we would have to provide to new development in order to maintain that level of service. And I think that is what, 85?
88.
88, okay. That was close.
So we're not bound by 88 acres.
No, and that's my next point. You could choose to buy or build 150 acres, right? But new growth's only going to pay for 88, because anything above that 88,
Well, what about less than 88?
well, then I think you're vulnerable to challenge, because new growth has paid you this fee to maintain this level of service. And so you need to be providing that level of service in order to not get.
But what if in our judgment that we don't believe that we're gonna need 88 acres? I mean, we've got a lot of acreage that hasn't been developed yet. So, you know, I can't support the purchase of 88 acres. I don't think that we need 88 additional acres of land. I mean, Hendersonville is landlocked. Land is at a premium. And I think if we build out what we have, so, but you're saying if we don't use 88, the whole study can't defend impact fees?
You're vulnerable to challenge, and this is a decision for you all, right? And you're not the only ones who've brought this up. We've worked for a lot of clients, particularly, I'll just give you an analogy or two, but, you know, after the Great Recession, we worked with a lot of clients that were struggling with, you know, operating revenue. And so a lot of them backed off on the park fee with the land component, and the focus of the fee was just to improve undeveloped parks within the system and not buy new land because they didn't have the money to operate it. We've also worked with clients, and I overheard a conversation about this before this meeting, about the fact that that is a lot of land, right? You may decide as a city that that you've got excess capacity in the system, right? Because we're taking a literal snapshot of what your level of service is today. If you compare your park system to the amount of residential development you have today, that's your level of service. And let's just say that's 1 acre per thousand. I'm just using round numbers here. You may decide as a body that 88 acres is too much, particularly given the things that you outlined, and you may, as a policy perspective, want to say, we're fine with the level of service of 0.65 acres per thousand. And that may generate the need for 40 acres. But that's a policy decision.
And is that defendable?
Yes, certainly. Particularly if you adopt it at that level of service and you only build 40 or buy 45 acres and that satisfies your level of service, you're fine. Otherwise, you've asked new development to pay a disproportionate share of what it costs to provide the park system over the next 10 years.
Yeah. So in your calculation on the land, did you assume that it was all operating or developed?
New land that
No.
but you can use the other part of the fee to develop this land or your existing parks.
So you understand that some of that land that you listed on the table before
Yes.
this is not developed?
Exactly.
You understand that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a new purchase proposition right here. Now, and that's something for discussion, as you've brought up, in terms of what your levels of service are. But here's your level of service for the improvements, and we do the same thing. Over the next 10 years, you would need to spend about, what's that, $6.2 million on new improvements. Those improvements would be constructed at either your existing parks that have undeveloped portions, or it could be on the new land. So you have flexibility there.
I would like to clarify, if we lower the level of service because we don't want that many acres, because our strategic plan for the parks indicated we have ample land, it's just not being used effectively. That lowers the impact fee because we can no longer justify that impact fee.
Yeah, and for those of you who were here in 2019, there was not a land component to that fee. It was just improvements.
So we could remove the land
You could.
component,
You certainly could.
but the impact fee would be significantly lower?
Yes, because that's what's driving the fee.
And so can you tell us what the impact fee would be if we removed the land component completely?
I could in about
Yeah, it's
45 seconds.
about $2,000.
If you wanted me to do that, I could certainly do that.
But about $2,000
Yeah,
is
about
what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we remove the land component and increase the improvement component?
No, because that's what it is, right?
Well, we've got two buckets. We've got some of the impact fees for land and for improvements. do those buckets have to be segregated?
Yeah, they do.
You can't use some of the land money to help develop park land that hadn't been developed yet.
Right, you're correct. Now, the other option you have is you could do a plan-based approach for land where you say, you commit to, we're gonna build one more park, and that park's gonna be 15 acres or whatever it is, and you could have a plan-based component for the land and use that consumption base for the improvements.
Say that again.
So you could use keep this methodology for the improvements, where you could use anywhere, right, as long as you're building new ball fields, et cetera, et cetera. But you could say, to this gentleman's point, that 88, we physically and logistically, we can't provide 88 acres of parkland, but we are gonna commit ourselves to build one more park. Let's just say it was 20 acres. You could do a plan-based approach with that and consumption-based approach with the improvements. Right. And so then what we do is we multiply those costs per person by the persons per household for each of the types of single-family development shown here at the average housing unit size for single family is 2.63 compared to 1.78 for multifamily in order to get the impact fees of $71.97 and $48.71. Now, there's nothing that says that you have to adopt 100% of that number. You can choose to adopt a percentage thereof. You can choose to remove the land component or reduce the level of service standard for land, but this is the maximum justifiable impact fee.
What would be the rationale for reducing, say, cutting by 50%?
Some communities, they take into account what their competing jurisdictions are charging. Sometimes there's just a gut feeling of what the politically acceptable number is, right? There's all sorts of different reasons for doing that, but we recommend if you're going to reduce fees that you do it organically by removing components, because if you were to just arbitrarily keep this fee the way it is in terms of there's going to be a land component and a park improvement component, and we're only going to charge half, I would argue that legally you have to fund the entire CIP. It's just you're going to come up with the other half of the money because you've discounted the fees 50%.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, so in theory, the city's job would be to plan, and this is a park fee, any new land and any improvements to those parks. So in theory, you're working backwards, right? So you really don't know what your impact fees would be until you put that plan in motion.
Well, yes and no. You're taking your best educated guess today based on cost, and if you find out 2 years from now, when you go to develop parks, that the impact fees are deficient because the construction costs have gone up so much, then you know that it's time to either redo the fee, or some jurisdictions will peg the fee through ordinance to something like the engineering news and records inflation adjustment. So each year, an automatic escalator occurs in order to keep pace with construction.
So impact fees are a moving entity. Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not a static fee, so to speak. They should be updated.
Anything else? Michael?
I'm glad we're having this discussion because a lot of the people in the community hear impact fees and they think it's something and it's not. So going through and articulating what it actually is, I think is good. How does this setup or proposed setup and income over the next 10 years compare to the amount of money that we would bring in under our current system and the flexibility that we have with, I think we call it the negotiation process?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how much money you're bringing in with the negotiation process, but this is the cash flow under the impact fees. So essentially, if somebody could help me here, I think it's about $10.4 million. Is that what it says there over the next 10 years? Yeah, projected revenue. 30. Oh, 30. 30. I need a new prescription. Yeah, so you would, new growth would generate $30 million in impact fee revenue. And again, because we've used this consumption-based approach, there is no non-growth share. So basically, the city doesn't have to come up with additional money. You can if you want to, but that would be improving your level of service. So Yeah, so new growth would generate 30 million, you'd have 30 million to build, buy parkland and improve parks. And I don't know what you're getting in the negotiations that you're getting today.
So for us to make that decision, we would probably need to have that as apples to apples. So if there's a benefit for the city to pursue this, but it produces less income, then it's not a good deal for the city.
So, so Keith, we're gonna need you to address that. David, you got a question here? And Mike, why don't y'all both come up here?
Who's mine?
Seems like to Mr. Martin's point, y'all are talking apples and oranges. This park fee is gonna be for park improvements that y'all have never in the last 10 years spent over. Well, I think in 2019, you spent money moving the,
David,
The
we did buy Heritage Park. That was $3 million.
right,
Yeah.
you did. It was 2.4. I got the numbers today. But what I'm saying is that you're collecting all this money that you have to spend on parks, and you're gonna spend $30 million over the next 10 years, if all of his numbers are correct, to improve the quality, when historically, you've not spent anywhere, I don't know, in the history of the city of Hendersonville, you've spent $30 million on parks. But in the negotiation process, because I've been on the other side of that, we improve streets, and then we give money, and it goes to where that particular development is focused. So traffic, roads, things of that nature, and y'all can direct it as you see fit. That's the difference.
Appreciate that. Mike, do you have something? Thank you, David.
Yes, I'm Mike Gahn. I live at 120 Ashland Point. I've lived here since 1966. I've helped build soccer fields. I've helped build baseball fields through all our organizations that we've had. I'll ask a question of you right now. Who knows what the average price in Hendersonville is today?
Price for what?
Average residential house price in Hendersonville today?
305.
$529. And you want to increase that by $7,000. And you look your child in the eyes and tell them that you're going to do that. How ridiculous is that? You just passed a referendum to have a sales tax increase that costs each resident $74 a year. This particular tax will cost a new home buyer $500 a year. Is that fair? When most people moving to Hendersonville are buying existing homes, most of the people buying new homes are people like you that move from one subdivision to a new subdivision. It's an unfair tax. There's no way you can get around it. You asked the question, could you improve Stop 30 Road? No, you can't. Not with this.
I didn't say with this, not with the park fee.
I'm just clarifying a question. He said you could, and you can't improve roads. It's only for parks.
I wasn't speaking about I wasn't speaking about a park impact fee, I was speaking about a potential road impact fee.
Okay, so an additional tax.
Correct. And
So
it's not a tax.
More fees, which is a tax.
It's not, but thank
It's
you.
not? How do you
It's a
say it's
fee.
not a
Hold on,
tax?
hold on. We
It's a
got
fee.
an explanation earlier, the difference between the tax and the fee. So we're gonna go with that.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
A fee's a fee and a tax, right. But it's a tax. So if you think this is fair to your children or your grandchildren, pass it. But it's not. You could pass a broad-based tax, the property tax, which you tied your hands with this new sales tax that you can't do for 4 years. But you could do a lot of different things and spread it out, because everybody's going to use the parks. Everybody's going to drive on the roads. Everybody's going to use the police department. Everybody's going to use the fire department. So why are you singling out certain individuals to improve your infrastructures? It's not right. Pure and simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Jeff, you want to say anything? Makes sense. Okay. Keith, can you answer what the question was a few minutes ago? Yeah.
I think if I understood it right, Alderman Martin, were you talking about negotiated fees in the past or or like negotiated fees moving forward?
Both. I'm
Okay.
curious as to what we bring in
Right.
the past, what we currently bring in, and what we would bring in over the next 10 years
Right.
to see if this is something we can work
Right.
with, or
The position that we've taken right now, of course, we're open, we've looked at it legally, but we're open to discussion about it from a legal perspective. But the position right now, other than 3 particular developments that were negotiated back in 2019 when this was originally being considered, they specifically were approved, excluding them from any future development impact fee. All the other negotiated deals do not have that specific language in it. So those, at this point in time, we would consider that they would pay those in addition at this point, the way it's proposed right now. Moving forward on the negotiated fees, state law was, something was added to state law last year that probably puts that, puts the potential of that, makes it more difficult for that to occur from a negotiated standpoint. That doesn't eliminate someone, a developer was here this evening, doesn't eliminate a developer wanting to give something, but certainly it couldn't be anything that the expectation was there and that the decision was made based on whether someone gave or not. There's specific state statutes that deal with off-site improvements that aren't directly associated with the development. So that's complicated that moving forward. So there wouldn't be a way to estimate what that would be because it's significantly diminished the potential.
Keith, really,
Yes. Oh, yes.
that the informal impact fees or the negotiated, what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Those are done when it's a planned development,
That's
correct?
That's correct.
Period.
Yes.
We have a lot of land in the city that's not going to go a planned unit development. I mean, I think we're getting away from high density. So those informal impact fees are not applicable where there is no zone change. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
Thank
That'd
you.
be correct.
That's the difference.
think we're getting away from high density.
That would be something that the, ultimately, because it would involve BOMA determination and decision on zone changes, that would be something that would be, something that BOMA would need to determine on a case-by-case basis. But I wouldn't be able to make a statement to that. I think certainly everyone is sensitive, including the Planning Commission, planning staff, and BOMA, to high density and just some of the infrastructure issues related to that.
So that's a pretty big distinction in that we're only getting that negotiated portion from the planned development. I didn't know that. I thought everybody had some kind of negotiated contribution. I'm just going to say this as a statement. I'm not in favor of this whole parks thing. We need a new police precinct. Under your test, that benefits everybody, no matter where the development is. It's a nexus. We need to start saving up for that, as well as infrastructure and roads and a new fire station. So that, more police cars. I mean, that's something I'd like to talk with y'all further about. Thank you.
I just want to say that nobody asked me if I wanted an impact fee for parks versus roads versus anything else. So I didn't have an opportunity to weigh in on this before the study was done. But if I were going to support an impact fee for parks, I would need to feel like that fee was driven by our strategic plan for the Parks Department. And to me, this feels like the tail wagging the dog. This is saying you're going to need to purchase all this land, you're going to need to do all of these improvements, and this improvement is going to increase our maintenance costs, the improvements that we make. Now we have to maintain them. We don't have a plan for that either. I would want to see a parks, if we were to do an impact fee for parks, it would really need to be driven by the strategic plan that we have for our Parks Department. This isn't that. So I would almost just want to ask that the people sponsoring this consider, when we have our little 3-minute dash to the bathroom here, that we defer this from tonight's agenda.
So I'm
Oh,
to-
I'm sorry.
So I'm to blame for this, that it includes only parks. Because when we tried this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it got voted down for the primary reason that it had a perceived negative impact on future businesses. So the only way to address that was to take out the funds that would go to police, fire, and roads, and so that it would apply only to residents. So I feel like I sort of listened to what the board said 4 years ago, and I'm coming back, and now you're saying you should have done what the board did
Well,
4
there's
years
only
ago.
there's only 3 people here that were
That
on
is
the
a
board
very
4
valid
years
point.
ago.
That is a very valid point. So as I said, I took blame, not credit for that. So we're getting close to time, and we can go on. That's okay. Do we have anything else that we want to hit on?
A quick question on the consultant, on this parkland and improvements. If we cut the land 50%, will we have to cut the park improvements 50% as well? We won't, okay. I would like to see, Mayor, and I know, but I would like to see, okay, let me ask the question. Would we be able to build a new police precinct? Replace the existing facility, police building, with impact fees?
Conceivably, yes, depending on how big it is. If you're going to be adding capacity, yeah, a portion of that would be impact fee
The
eligible.
portion of that only. So if it costs $5 million to build a new police precinct, only the portion of, that we've added capacity, not the existing.
Exactly. So if you had a 10,000 square foot facility and you built a 20,000, then 50% of it
I
would be
got you.
impact fee eligible.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
I would like to see an additional study on road improvements. That's my key, is road improvements. I don't have an objection to look at parkland. I do, though, have a sweet number that right now, developers are paying $3,500. I think that's the going rate on the negotiated settlements that we're receiving, $3,500 per lot. You don't know that, but we do. I would like to see whatever fee that we do not exceed $5,000.
If we did that, if we went with a reduced fee, could we come back a year later, 2 years, 10 years later, and increase that fee? If we did 60% of the $7,000, okay, so we can come back and go to 80%, 90%, whatever. Could it also later on, if we imposed a 50% fee, could we come back in 2 years or a year and then add on another type of impact fee that would go to police or fire or? Okay.
You could.
Okay.
With the new study, right?
With a new study.
With the new study,
Yes,
right,
yes. Alderman Robertson, you got me thinking there. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I hate to, because every time we do more study, the consultant fees goes up. I know. But this is important to get right, and I do have a concern. This is an exercise of government policing. And I want to be very careful. I hear the concerns of the people that have spoken, and affordability is important to me. Housing affordability is important. And I think around the $5,000 mark, that's pretty it's much less than Franklin is charging. And so I wouldn't want to do anything over that amount if we move forward at all on it. But I would want to include roads into that equation, because I think we have greater needs for road improvements than park improvements.
Any other discussion, any other comments or questions?
I just had a general question. Would we all, as a group, be able to agree on what we're going to send him to expand his search if we do send?
We can't make decisions at a workshop. You're welcome to send me an email, or we could have a discussion at the Public Works Committee and sort of try to come to consensus then.
Okay. I really appreciate you coming and sharing
My
this
pleasure,
information.
my pleasure.
Anything else? Okay. So let's try to get started at 7:05. So let's take a break and get back here and try to start.